We are live. Man, look it. This almost did not happen. Talking about some technological differences or difficulties. Hey, this camera's been working this whole day, but when it's time to go to the people live, it kind of want to act up. But we are finally here. And hey, this is going to be an exciting show for a number of reasons. As you see in the banner section, I named this show Copycat, with the tariffs and China and Donald Trump kind of going back and forth this past week. I thought this was a good time to talk about kind of copycats and knockoffs, things like that, particularly when you're talking about someone selling product, as this is, I think, really relevant to that. For those of you who don't know, I am Dave, 10-year intellectual property attorney, dealing with everything from patents, copyrights, trademarks, as well as trade secrets. Look, I even have kind of a product here from one of my clients, Snap Slide, here to you guys. And hey, man, we got a full show for you guys. We're talking about Kevin O'Leary is going off on Trump saying, hey, this 100% tariffs that you're kind of giving the Chinese, hey, raise that up to 400%. We are talking about DMX. DMX and ex-wife sued his estate to try to get ownership of his music catalog, or at least her fair share. And to be honest with you, I think she got screwed. So we'll talk about that. The lawsuit of the week, we have Wild Tomatoes, a pizzeria in Wisconsin, suing another pizzeria for trademark infringement. That'll be an interesting one. I'll give you guys my thoughts on that. And then what else do we have here? We have the Shark Tank breakdown for the week, as well as the interview for the week. So we have a lot to kind of get to you guys for today. And we are going to start with your boy DMX. So let me kind of pull up that here, as you see here in the banner there. So for those of you who don't know, so just kind of breaking this down, and I did a full video on this, so I'm not going to talk about it in detail, but I am going to give you guys the lay of the land. So DMX, obviously we all know that he passed away in 2021, and he was married to a longtime ex-wife. I think her name is Letitia Simmons, for 16 years. Talking about a good marriage these days, 16 years is a long time to be married. But during that time, I think from 1990 to 2016, when they got divorced, hey, DMX, we all know he had a lot of hits. Let's just say I had the one Get At Me Dog in my head for whatever reason, but he had a lot of hits from that 16 years that they were married. And it seems like they got divorced in 2016. Afterwards, DMX, you can't hold a player down for too long. He got back out in the streets, got somebody he started dating who later became his fiance. Unfortunately, DMX passes away in 2021. However, he has all this IP out there. Music catalog is a form of copyrights, which, again, the good thing about copyrights, if you guys don't know, it lasts for the life of the author plus 70 years. So even though DMX passes away in 2021, his copyright or his music catalog has another 70 years for somebody to make money off of it. So obviously it's going to be a battle between his ex-wife and his estate, which are two different people in this situation. So with all that being said, the reason I think DMX ex-wife got screwed is because, absent a prenuptial agreement, and I'm not going to say I'm an expert in prenups by any stretch of the imagination, but I do know a little bit something about kind of divorce law. Typically, absent a prenup, all the assets that you get during the marriage is really kind of co-owned, split 50-50. So, for example, for every regular everyday people, if you get married and then you get a house, you and your wife get or you and your spouse get a house or a car, and you guys have no prenup, then to the extent that you guys get a divorce, half of it goes to the husband, half of it goes to the wife. Typically, with regards to the house, that kind of plays out in terms of you guys have to sell the house and then both of you guys get, split the proceeds 50-50. Of course, you can buy one or the other out. But all that to say is, if you don't have a prenup, then all the assets get split 50-50. Now, this article that I have pulled up, it doesn't kind of talk about in detail whether or not, it doesn't talk about at all that they did have a prenuptial agreement. And I would imagine DMX in 1990 is not getting any type of prenup. So, they didn't have a prenup. However, he remained or maintained ownership of his IP catalog after they got divorced. So, she's like, hey, and she lost this battle. The judge ruled in favor of the estate, saying that, hey, yeah, after the divorce, DMX is talking about royalty payments, but the way he made it seem like is, you guys don't get, you ex-wife Letitia Simmons, you don't have any ownership of the IP, which in my opinion is some BS, because again, when you have that judgment of divorce in 2016, then the judgment of divorce should say who owns all the assets, and part of the assets is the intellectual property. It seems like, according to this article on Hot 97 or whatever, Hot 97, it says that the judgment of divorce had it says something about intellectual property, but it didn't say who has the ownership. So in my opinion, the lawyers as well as the judge in that judgment of divorce kind of screwed up, and that ultimately kind of affected Letitia Simmons, the ex-wife, because it should have broken down who owned the intellectual property. So again, you guys let me know in the comment section if you guys know something that I don't know as it relates to a prenup. I haven't been necessarily following this story closely, but I do know that according to this article that I'm not going to read, that I kind of went over earlier on in the week, his ex-wife got screwed because his music catalog should have been co-owned by himself as well as his ex-wife, based on them not having a prenup. And to the extent that he passed away, she should have got 50% of that, and therefore half of the royalties that was made from all his music, DMX's music catalog, should have been kind of split 50-50 between him and his ex-wife. So again, this is the importance of, number one, making sure you have a prenup so that you can kind of direct the assets the way you see fit. But then to the extent you don't have a prenup, all the assets that's owned, that were acquired during the marriage, let's just say, should be split 50-50 between you and the ex-wife. So that's something that I did want to bring to you guys before we start talking about this tariff talk, because I do think that his ex-wife did get screwed in that situation. So let's move on here. And before we move on, I have to talk about really the news of the week for me. My ebook just came out, Got IP. I'm going to probably put the link. I'm not going to be able to put it in the chat during at this, but I'm going to put it in the description once the video uploads, once this live uploads. And go check out the ebook, man. I think the ebook is pretty cool. Obviously, me as being a 10-year intellectual property attorney, your boy have kind of acquired some experience, let's just say, over the past 10 years. Not only that, my experience, I've interviewed over 100 business owners, a lot of people, all of which who have protected their intellectual property in some form or fashion, and many of which have been on Shark Tank. So I pull from those interviews or those stories in the interviews and kind of interweave throughout the book on these different principles. And this book is good from you trying to find an ideal to monetize off of, to actually having a product and selling it to make money. It gives you each step in between. And I think it's good. So definitely go check out that ebook. Like I said, it's not in the, I wish I had, I'm not sure if Brandon is on. I was going to see if he can put it in the chat, but to the extent that he's not on, I'll upload it to the description once this interview goes live afterwards. So let's kind of move on here. Shout out to me for that. I'm excited about that, as well as I do have a couple other things in the pipeline. We're going to talk about next Mr. Wonderful being on CNN. I already kind of briefed you guys on the fact that he was talking about Trump should raise the tariffs not only to the 100% that he has raised them to, but he should increase them to 400%. We're going to take a look at this article from this Kevin O'Leary, Mr. Wonderful, who is essentially the star of the show of Shark Tank. We're going to talk about, we're going to go through this video, and he's going to give you what his thoughts is of the tariffs, and then we're going to come back and I'll kind of let you know whether or not he's right or wrong. Let's go.
If we go into a full-scale trade war.
Look, it's really ugly. This president won the election based on reducing costs, but he's enacted the largest tax increase we've seen in over 50 years. And you know who's going to pay the price? Americans shopping at Walmart, Americans shopping at Costco. We don't know the purpose of these tariffs. The only thing we do know is he's planning on taking tax revenue from Americans paying more at Walmart and Costco and putting that into tax cuts for the wealthiest Americans. It's totally gross, and it's putting us on the brink of a recession. It could cost us tons of manufacturing jobs as we get into this trade war. It's a really...
Look, so I have to stop it right here. Mr. Wonderful is on the right-hand side. And again, like I said, he's the star of the hit show Shark Tank. So if you've seen Shark Tank once or twice, you will probably seen him on Shark Tank. But this gentleman to the left, again, CNN. We all know that CNN is kind of more so a left-leaning platform. And I'm not saying who's right or wrong as it relates to Democrats or Republicans. But what I will say is, you can tell this gentleman on the left-hand side has never ran a business, because he's talking about people, seeing spikes in products as they shop at Costco and Target and Sam's Club. And again, that is true. I would imagine that it's going to be some challenging times as we kind of get this tariff stuff worked out. But to say that small business owners are not, and again, this is what Mr. Wonderful, once he starts cooking here in a second, he's going to talk about this, where again, small business owners are essentially being screwed, because when you go, matter of fact, I was just kind of breaking down a Shark Tank episode yesterday, and one of the guys, Rough Liners, which we'll talk about, because that was my Shark Tank pitch of the week, he talks about how once he started doing $5 million on Shark Tank, he started getting the knockoffs. And where do you think those knockoffs were from? Do you think they're from China? Do you think they're from American? I can give you a guess. Those knockoffs that was knocking off his particular product were from China. So again, that hurts not only the small businesses, but that also hurts you as a consumer, because when you go on Amazon or when you go on eBay or these e-commerce platforms to buy your product, and you get the product and it's a knockoff and it's cheap and it breaks within 2 days, you have to then go rebuy the product. So that hurts the little guy again. So let's get back to this video, and Mr. Wonderful is going to cook in a little bit. But I do want to say this guy on the left, you can tell he has never ran a business, because when you have these knockoffs in China, that hurts the small businesses, which is the largest employer in the U.S., in addition to hurting the consumer. Let's go.
Disturbing policy. I hope he backs off.
But Kevin, he said there's a lot of deals that they're literally kissing his ass, was the phrase he used, very eloquently. Where are the deals?
104% tariffs on China are not enough. I'm advocating 400%. I do business in China. They don't play by the rules. They've been in the WTO for decades. They have never abided by any of the rules they agreed to when they came in for decades. They cheat, they steal IP. I can't litigate in their courts. They take product, technology, they steal it, they manufacture it, sell it back here. Never has an administration.
400% tariffs? What would that
I
look
want
like?
Xi on an airplane to Washington to level the playing field. It's just not about tariffs anymore. Nobody has taken on China yet, not the Europeans, no administration for decades. As someone who actually does business there, I've had enough. I speak for millions of Americans who have IP that have been stolen by the Chinese. I have nothing against the Chinese people. They brought great literacy, art, and tech to the world. The government cheats and steals, and finally, an administration, you may not like Trump, you may not like his style or his rhetoric, finally, an administration that puts up and says enough. 400% tariffs tomorrow morning. He'll tell you why. Xi can only stay the supreme.
So he talked about that, and I'm actually bringing another clip of Mr. Wonderful, but he's right. So if you go back to my my catalog of interviews, it's been literally 2 companies. I've interviewed over 100 people at this point. It's been 2 companies who've been able to successfully litigate in China. One, Nancy Tedeschi. She actually talked about how she's kind of been able to have success in China courts multiple times for her snap-it screw, which she said it's actually pretty cheap to litigate there compared to the U.S. But then training masks, I think the gentleman, it's a training mask that was worn by LeBron James, Stephen Curry. I think Marshawn Lynch wore it in the Super Bowl. And he actually showed me a video offline after the interview where you had like the Chinese FBI hemming up some kids in a warehouse for having counterfeit goods. And he actually recently just sold that company training mask in 2024. So shouts out to him. I forget his name offhand. But again, these are 2 instances out of everybody who I interviewed. I actually did an interview and posted it earlier today where it was Shark Tank business after Shark Tank business talking about how they've been knocked off. One gentleman, about a month ago on Shark Tank, said he was suing Chinese manufacturers in blocks of 100. That means typically you're the plaintiff. If you sue somebody, they're the defendant. He was suing 100 defendants at a time for knocking off his product. And again, that's what Kevin O'Leary is talking about as a Shark Tank business. He's talking about how you have these Chinese knockoffs that are ultimately knocking off the product, selling it back to Americans for cheap. And who do you think that hurts? That hurts the business owner who has the IP and did it the right way, and that hurts the consumer. So I do want, like I said, I do want to play another video. I think I had some comments in the chat. Thanks, cuz, for the congratulations. Yeah, I'm excited about the ebook. I have a couple other children books. Actually, one I just finished today. Second one I just finished today, and one I finished last week. So be on the lookout for those children books, teaching IP as well. Seems like Brandon, I appreciate you. He put the link to the ebook in the chat. So definitely go check out that. I do want to bring up another video from, I think this was Fox News. And again, for me, this is not even about whether you're a Republican or a Democrat. This is about, hey, if Trump can include or have China play by the rules, when he kind of deals with this tariff or enter into a tariff agreement, then I think not only the small businesses explode here in America, but I think IP explodes as well. Let's see this one and see what Kevin O'Leary and the Fox News team has to say. Let's go.
O'Leary, chairman of O'Leary Ventures and Shark Tank star and investor. As I mentioned, he would like to see 400% tariffs on China. And he said, pretty strong language, quote, squeeze Chinese heads into the wall now. You want to explain what you're looking for in both of those opinions there, Kevin?
In the case of China, it's not just tariffs. It's not just a trade war. It's time after decades, ever since they joined the WTO in 2000, they have not abided by the rules and regulations. They have never, ever been compliant. And over time, this also happened in Europe and definitely domestically US, they have stolen an incredible amount, trillions of dollars worth of IP. And there has never been any consequences until this administration. Now, I'm pretty frustrated as an investor because the classic situation for small business and entrepreneurial investing is you find a product or service in America, you prove it in the American market to a run rate of $5 million a year on Amazon, and bang, it's ripped off in China.
And again, this is crazy that he's saying that. Essentially what he's saying is, hey, once you find a product, you get your IP, you protect it, you're selling it on Amazon, and once you hit $5 million in annual sales, I want to play this other video that kind of essentially confirms what he's saying, but I don't want to get a copyright strike from ABC and from Shark Tank on it. But it was just this past Friday, Rough Liners. Now I'll show you guys the product here in a little bit. They talked about when he was pitching to the Sharks that once they hit $5 million in sales, they start to get the knockoffs. It's almost like China has some type of algorithm where once your sales hit $5 million on Amazon, then they start making cheap knockoffs and flooding it to the market. That's essentially what he's talking about here.
There's nothing you can do. You can't go appeal to WTO. It's deaf ears there. You can't litigate because we don't have access to their courts, even though they have access to ours. And not only that, they have access to our capital markets. We let them list companies here. So I have to compete with a Chinese company that is not compliant with GAAP, that completely ignore the regulator, raise money when I have to compete.
So that's pretty much what he's saying. I think that's enough of what Kevin O'Leary was saying. But again, the big point of this is, regardless, whether this is not a partisan issue, this is not a Democrat to the Republicans. Actually, I was kind of looking at some old videos where Obama was talking about this back in the day. Nancy Pelosi was talking about this. Hillary Clinton was talking about this in terms of the trade deficit with China and how they kind of steal our IP and our products. But if this administration can get this right, hey, look it, small businesses, I promise you, small businesses will boom here in the U.S. because you don't have to worry about, at least it's a lot more manageable of Chinese knockoffs, flood in the U.S. market. And again, I think that also is going to have a benefit on intellectual property here in America. And, you know, actually the disappointing thing to me, for this to me is Congress could have did something about this. So I kind of, I almost blame Congress because I would say they are in cahoots with just kind of letting this go on forever, because we talk about, okay, yeah, the president, he has some power, obviously, but Congress, we all know, has a lot of power here in the U.S. And for them to just kind of go on with this and let this happen year after year, decade after decade, I kind of blame them as well. But hey, to the extent that this administration can fix this, I think, hey, man, I think small businesses boom here in the U.S. So that's kind of my take on that. Let me kind of get to the next one. This is the interview of the week, Legit Kits. Now, I think this is funny for a number of different reasons. Let me kind of pull up the interview here. Now, this gentleman, Mike, let me play the interview and then I'll come back and kind of give you guys my thoughts. Let's go, Mike. Oh, sure. I guess I should add it to the screen here.
Really long time. I was a critical care nurse for 12 years, and I traveled the country as a traveler, and the adrenaline of it and stuff wore off a long time ago for me. And anesthesia most of the time is like working in a factory. We're just doing the same thing over and over again, and it has been sucking my soul for a while. And I use that to keep this going. I use that fire. Like every time when my coworkers, something dumb happens, because dumb stuff just happens, right? It's a large business, and so there's just going to be some dumb stuff. They're like, how do you just put up with this? And I mean, that's just a job, right? I mean, that's part of a job, is putting up with stuff you don't necessarily want to put up with. You're paying for a reason. But I channel that. Like I'm just using this, man. I'm using this as more fire to heat those irons up and keep going. You gotta scrap it out in the beginning. You gotta believe in what you're doing. An entrepreneur has to be just a toxic optimist sometimes.
Preach. I like that. A toxic optimist. I have to write that down.
I just kind of made that up, but I see the sunny side of pretty much everything all the time, and sometimes that's divorced from reality. But you just got, if you believe in it and you keep hammering at it, persistence pays off more than anything.
Oh, look at this gentleman, Mike Odell. Now, he talked about, you guys have to listen to this. He talked about, he's not an anesthesiologist. However, he's like the next step down. So what that means is Mike is getting a lot of money out here. He didn't say it on the interview, but Mike is making a couple $100,000 just from his day job. And he's saying that he's using his day job to fuel his passion, which is Legit Kits. Let me pull up the banner here. So what he has with Legit Kits is he's essentially selling kits so that people can actually make a quilt. Now, you may not you may think that's boring. I may think that's boring. But this guy went on Shark Tank with his product. He actually did a deal. And more importantly, this guy is making millions of dollars selling kits. And he's trying to continue to do more and more of that. He's saying that's where he gets his energy from. That's where he gets his passion from. That's what he was saying with the whole, hey, man, anesthesiologist, administering these drugs to the patients. That kind of got boring a long time ago for me. But this business, being an entrepreneur, being able to sell a product, making money off my product and seeing people, the joy that it brings to the other people's faces, he's saying that's what that's my drive at this point. That's what gets me going, which, again, I love that. And again, people talk about, okay, I got a niche product, and okay, yeah, it may not appeal to all, but just because you got a niche product, that does not mean that you can't make a lot of money. This guy, like I said, Mike Odell, go check out that full interview. That was just a snippet that I played. This guy's making millions of dollars selling quilts, selling quilt kits, I should say. And he kind of did, I forget who he did a deal with on Shark Tank, but he's a cool guy, really cool guy. And shout out to Mike for the interview. Go check out that interview. It just dropped on Wednesday, and man, yeah, he's a really cool dude. Like I said, Mike is getting paid out here, but he's one of those guys who, hey, the Legit Kits, what he's doing with his side hustle is something that he's kind of paying attention to. So this is the Shark Tank pitch for the week that I actually like. I'm gonna kind of bring up here. This is a rough liner. So again, for all you pet owners, now see here, you see the picture to the left, his dog, or a dog. Seems like this is his dog. What is this? A golden retriever? So he was on, I forget the gentleman's name, but he was on Shark Tank 2 days ago. He actually got a deal with Robert, and it's essentially, it's kind of pet protection equipment that goes into your vehicle so that the dog is not getting hair all over the place. It's not scratching up the vehicle. You see these liners here that's on the door. They're actually on the seat and stuff as well. Again, he talked about on the actual show that once he hit 5 million, he just did 5 million last year, but he started to get the knockoffs, which kind of confirms Kevin O'Leary's point earlier that once you hit a certain amount in sales, you get the Chinese knockoffs. But I think one of the other things that I think was important with this particular product is this gentleman, he was an aeronautical engineer, and he quit his job and going business full time. Look, do you guys remember? You guys have to let me know in the chat. Do you remember when entrepreneurship 15, 20 years ago is something that you did when everything else failed? Your parents wanted you to go to business school, wanted you to become an engineer, wanted you to become a doctor. But when you couldn't make it or you couldn't cut it out at all those different things, you went off into entrepreneurship just to try to do something. Whereas nowadays, entrepreneurship is almost like the preferred destination. This guy, like I said, he was an aeronautical engineer. And I can tell you what, as an aeronautical engineer, he was another guy that was easily making 6 figures. He did that for a couple of years and said, you know what, I want to do something different. Quit his job as an engineer, went into business for himself. Rough liners is the product, dog liners, based on, again, him having a dog and solving a problem that he was facing with the dog scratching up his seat, scratching up the doors. And I think he had a couple patents, or utility patents at least, on the product. And he's making what? I have the sales right here. In 2023, he did $1.5 million. In 2024, this guy did $5 million, of which he took home $500,000. I mean, I don't know what you guys want me to say, man. Again, like I said, entrepreneurship is like a it was looked down upon 15, 20 years ago. But if you're not kind of doing something these days that's a side hustle separate from your job until you can make it actually a real hustle, I think you're missing out. This dude, what they say, the average income in America is $40,000, $50,000. This guy quit his job as an aeronautical engineer, bet on himself, eventually did, had a business that as of last year, 2024, was making $5 million and was taking home $500,000 of that. And he was doing this all on the internet. He was selling D2C, direct to consumers. And he talked about, on my notes here, he talked about Chinese manufacturers knocking him off. So again, this is not a partisan issue with what this administration is trying to do with the tariffs and hopefully kind of doing something about the knockoffs here in China. This is something that has a big effect on small business owners. So go check out that reaction video that I did on Rough Liners. Like I said, he got a deal on Shark Tank with Robert. And yeah, I thought it was a pretty good video there. So let's move on here to the actual lawsuit of the week. And this lawsuit is brought to you by, this is Wild Tomato. So this is actually a Wisconsin company, Wisconsin pizzeria. And I actually like this for a number of reasons, this particular lawsuit. And I'm gonna share my reasoning here for a little bit. So you may get a cease and desist letter to the extent that you ultimately start your business. It may be because of trademark infringement. It may be because of copyright infringement. Heck, it may be because of patent infringement if you have a product. But that does not mean that you have done something wrong. We're going to take a look at this lawsuit like we do with every lawsuit. And I want you guys to let me know whether or not you think that this is trademark infringement. Now, I do not. I think this is a stretch. So Wild Tomato here, the company to the left, the pizzeria, they have a trademark, which we'll find out more in detail when we go through the lawsuit, which is a short lawsuit. So we'll be up out here pretty quickly. They have two trademarks, one on Wild Tomato, the name, which you see up here at the top. Then they have one on the actual tomato, which is like, it has some kind of wild eyes, which you see below the Wild Tomato sign. So they have two trademarks. They actually sued another pizza company in Wisconsin for trademark infringement. And that pizza company is called Wildman. Now, I'm not sure about you, but Wild Tomato and Wildman are two completely different marks that I personally am not. There's not a likelihood of confusion for me. But again, as we go through the lawsuit, I want you guys to give me your opinion. Again, the whole standard with trademark infringement is not that the marks are similar, but that they're confusingly similar, meaning that if you was to kind of, go down ride down the street and see a billboard of Wildman or that logo, you will get confused thinking that it is associated with Wild Tomato, the logo that you see here on the left-hand side of the banner. So let's pull up the lawsuit. Like I said, it's a pretty straightforward lawsuit, a pretty short lawsuit. What is it? See, it's only 15 pages. So this should be pretty quick. I think we may also look up the cease and desist letter. But again, I think this is important because, again, Wild Tomato sent a cease and desist letter to Wildman. And to me, I think all this is bogus. But I'd love to hear from you guys in the chat. So please feel free to leave your comments in the chat as we go through this one. So this is Wild Tomato, a pizza place in Wisconsin. And Wildman is another pizza place in Wisconsin. Let's read the complaint here. This is the parties. Plaintiff Wild Tomato is a Wisconsin LLC. Let's see, upon information of believed defendant, Wildman is another company in Wisconsin, and it gives the address there. They air you out on these lawsuits. Let's look at the factual background. In 2008, so Wild Tomato has been around since the recession. Wild Tomato opened up a restaurant in Fish Creek. In 2014, Wild Tomato opened up a second location. So it seems like they got a couple locations here. Wild Tomato is the owner of a few federal registered trademarks. At least they registered their trademarks: Wild Tomato Pizza and Wild Tomato Wood Fire Pizza and Grill. And they have common law rights as well. The Wild marks have been used continuously in commerce in connection with Wild Tomato's restaurant and food products since have acquired significant goodwill and consumer recognition. Wild Tomato, including through its use of the Wild marks, has become synonymous with and sought out for highly quality wood-fired pizzas. And they have a wood-fired pizza around the corner from me called Bricks Pizza in Detroit Metro. Man, that's some good wood-fired pizza. By virtue of its continued rendering of its services in exclusive advertising using the Wild marks, Wild Tomato has garnered and owns exclusive common law trademark rights in each and every one of them in combination of one or more of them. So let's look at the bad acts, the alleged bad acts, I should say. In late February 2025, so this was earlier this year, Wild Tomato became aware that the advertising ideal of the words Wildman and a logo featuring a scowl-eyed head with spiky hair were being used to advertise a grill pizzeria. Now, again, you guys have to let me know in the chat so far. Do you think, you haven't seen the logo, which I'll pull up here in a second, but do you think Wildman is confusingly similar to Wild Tomato? I'd be interested in here. I don't think it's similar. Just because you have wild in there, that doesn't mean that, you can stop everybody who used the word wild for a pizzeria, wood grill, or wood-fired pizzeria. I don't think Wildman and Wild Tomato is confusingly similar, but let's continue reading. At least as of early of October of 2024, a grill and pizzeria under the name Wildman was being advertised on Red Oak's Facebook page. I'm not going to pull up that exhibit. Wild Tomato became aware of the billboard advertising a grill and pizzeria under the name Wildman and the logo featuring, again, the scowl-eyed head with spiky hair. This billboard is shown in Exhibit B. I think once we pull up the cease and desist letter that Wild Tomato sent Wildman, you'll see the billboard. Upon information and belief, the Wildman Pizzeria is operated by Wildman out of and or in conjunction with Red Oak at that Wisconsin address. Let's kind of move on here. Such advertising and belief. I'm trying to get to the good stuff. Okay, here we go. On or about March of 2025. So just last month, Wild Tomato sent a cease and desist letter to Wildman demanding that Wildman immediately cease use of infringing marks and undertake to remove all advertising and signage using the Wild moniker in connection with a grill or a pizzeria. I actually want to pull up now at this particular point in time. I do want to pull up this cease and desist letter and go through it really quickly. Again, I think this is important stuff because, and I hope everybody who's watching this at some point, they start a business. And just because you get hit with a cease and desist letter, number one, definitely don't just blow it off like many people do. Have, get counsel, get representation, and have that representation respond to the cease and desist letter. And they're going to tell you, just like I would have told my client, that this is bogus. So this is the cease and desist letter that Wild Tomato sent Wildman, and this from Smith King. Assuming this is a Wisconsin law firm. So this is, again, you see here the marks here. I mean, the logos, Wild Tomato, as well as the kind of the tomato with the eyes and I guess the crown or the spike hair. Those are trademarks from Wild Tomato. So our firm represents Wild Tomato regarding some of its IP. And it kind of shows the IP below. Wild recently became aware that there's a grill and pizzeria being advertised under the name Wildman, at least on Facebook and on a billboard featuring a scowl-eyed head with spiky hair. Wild understands that the pizzeria is operated by Wildman out of, in, or in conjunction with the Red Oak. What's the name? So this is kind of where we're getting to it. You see the Wildman. This is obviously the Wildman word mark, and this is the logo. Now, again, let me know in the chat. Do you think that this tomato is confusingly similar as this gentleman with the spike hair with the eyes? I already told you I don't think Wild Tomato is confusingly similar as Wildman, but I don't even think that the gentleman with the hair, with the eyes, with the spike hair and the eyes is confusingly similar to tomato logo. So I think this is bogus all the way around, in my opinion. But I would love to hear from you guys in the chat. Let's continue to read the cease and desist. Your unauthorized display of Wildman or a scowl-eyed head with spiky hair in connection with and in advertising for a grill and pizzeria is likely to cause confusion or to cause a mistake or to deceive as to the affiliation, connection, or association of your services with Wild. Or as to the origin, sponsorship, man. And sometimes they got to put a period in these joints. Accordingly, your advertising constitutes at least a negligent and potentially a knowing and willful trademark infringement, false designation, and a few other things. In an effort to resolve this matter in a timely and reasonable fashion, our client is not demanding payment of any amount of money that it may have the right to, which may be tripled in the event your behavior is proven to be willful. However, Wild demands that within 2 weeks from the date of this letter, you cease and desist all use of Wildman and undertake to remove all advertising. They essentially want them to remove this billboard. I would imagine that this billboard costs at least a couple grand. They want you to remove all advertising and signage using a Wild moniker in connection with the grill or pizzeria. While Wild has elected to not file a federal lawsuit against you at this time, eventually it seems like they filed one. Wild reserves the right to do so, and this letter serves as notice to you that you must retain, you must not delete, take down, or destroy any and all documents, information, and things related to your operation of a food service under the Wildman to be discovered in the event of any litigation. Should you fail to comply, we will advise our client of his legal options, including a recommendation to file a federal lawsuit, against Wildman Inc., including claims of trademark infringement along with some other things. So again, this is, do you think that the Wildman word mark as well as the logo is a likelihood of confusion of the Wild Tomato mark as well as the tomato logo? It seems like Brandon has gave his opinion, and I would tend to agree with Brandon. Not similar at all. I think this is a stretch, which again, if you're receiving this cease and desist letter, especially as a small business, you may fuck around and shit on yourself, thinking that you did something wrong. But this is why I'm here to give you guys information. Just because you guys receive a cease and desist letter from somebody else, that does not mean that you have done anything wrong. Because if Wildman have came into my office and said, hey, I received this cease and desist letter from Wild Tomato, I would almost want to tell them to go wipe their behind with the cease and desist letter and throw it away. I wouldn't tell them that in real time, but I would say, hey, these are different marks. I do not believe that this is a trademark infringement. And I would obviously respond to the cease and desist letter from Wild Tomato saying that we do not think that this is trademark infringement. And to the extent that they wanted to commence or file a trademark lawsuit, then hey, we'll see y'all in court. But that would have been my recommendation for this particular matter. Let's try to get back to the lawsuit here to finish up with the lawsuit. But I agree with you, Brandon. I do not think this is trademark infringement at all. Let's pull back up the lawsuit and finish out here. So seems like they sent that cease and desist letter on March 5th. The next day, on March 6th, they sent another cease and desist letter to Red Oak, demanding that Red Oak cooperate with and assist that Wildman and Red Oak cease and desist. I'm not going to read that cease and desist letter. I would imagine that cease and desist letter that they sent to Red Oak was very similar to what they sent to Wildman. It seems like on March 6th, they also sent another cease and desist letter to Hunter Ashley Properties. And I would imagine again that cease and desist letter that they sent to Hunter Ashley was very similar to what they sent to Wild Marks. And so kind of let's read the first count, which is trademark infringement. Wild Tomato is the owner of a valid and enforceable trademark. Again, the good thing about Wild Tomato is that they do have some trademarks. The registered marks have been used continuously in commerce in connection with the plaintiff. Restaurants and food products have acquired significant goodwill and consumer recognition. The direct infringer's use of the infringing marks in connection with identical or closely related goods and services is likely to cause confusion, mistake, and deception among consumers by leading them to believe that the direct infringers are operating or are planning to operate a restaurant. You can tell that they're not saying that people have been actually confused. They're saying that it's likely to lead to consumer confusion, which I would disagree on that. The direct infringers actually have caused and will continue to cause irreparable harm, so forth and so on. So that's pretty much it. That's all I want to take you guys through on this lawsuit. This is interesting. Let me read this. Let me read this one. Contributory trademark infringement. Hunter Ashley. I would imagine that Hunter Ashley is the owner of the billboard. Upon the information, believe Hunter Ashley has not restricted installation of equipment on premises, leased and controlled by. Okay, so they seems like that's the owner of the property. Man, it's a dirty game out here. So what do you guys think, man? That's pretty much all I kind of wanted to go over with you guys with regard to that lawsuit. Again, the whole point of that lawsuit is just because you receive a cease and desist letter from somebody who's probably has more money than you, probably has been operating longer than you have, that does not mean that you have done anything wrong or you are in trouble legally. Now, whether or not you want to take on that fight in court, that's a different question. Maybe you guys want to work something out. But again, as Brandon kind of talked about in his comment, these trademarks are not similar, or these marks are not similar at all. Let me kind of bring up the marks for the people who are just coming here, just so you guys can kind of see what's going on and hopefully weigh in, because I would love to hear from you guys as well. Do you believe that these two marks are similar? So you see, this is Wild Tomato. They have a word mark on the word Wild Tomato, but they also have a trademark on this tomato with, I guess, it's spike hair or spike stem. Then you have the eyes there. Do you think that's a likelihood of confusion with Wildman? Then it's Gentleman with the spike hair, and you kind of still have the eyes. I do not believe so. It looks like Brandon does not believe so at all. But again, reasonable minds may differ. So I would love to hear from you to the extent that you guys disagree with us on this. It seems like now it didn't say whether or not Wildman responded to the cease and desist letter. I'm hoping that they did, and they just disagreed, and therefore Wild Tomato commenced legal action. But regardless of whether or not they responded or not, Wild Tomato still commenced legal action. And I do not think that Wild Tomato is going to come out on top on this one. So again, out of Wisconsin, pizzeria, kind of makes sense that it's a pizza company going back and forth with each other in Wisconsin. But I do not think that Wild Tomato or Wildman is going to be on the hook on this. Again, hopefully you guys enjoyed this one. We had some technical difficulties that kind of made it a shaky start, but we did get a chance to land the plane. Please go check out the interviews that came out this week. If you want to know about, at least my opinion on tariffs and how I think they will affect intellectual property, please go check out those videos that I did on that. Again, the Shark Tank videos, my reaction to those came out earlier as well over the last couple of days, so go check those out. Again, it was another one, Sock Candy. Hey, she was a Chinese immigrant, talking about the kind of the Chinese immigrants. She came here and she was selling socks. This was another one that I was impressed with. Her name was Mary, Chinese immigrant. She was selling socks. As of last year, she sold $1.5 million in socks and took home $300,000. So to the extent that you guys have these ideals, it can be as elaborate as trying to put a rocket ship into Mars, or it can be as simple as selling socks. You can still make hundreds of thousands of dollars on this. Definitely protect the IP, whether it's a trademark, whether it's a copyright, or whether it is a patent. And to the extent that you want to kind of get more, I want to say, direction on that, please go pick up the ebook, Got IP. I think Brandon did put that link in the chat. So thank you, Brandon, for that. Again, this is going to tell you how you even create an ideal, how you get feedback on it, how you protect the IP, how you get funding. It's going to talk about monetization of it, licensing, selling it on these e-commerce platforms. This thing is giving a lot of information. And more importantly, or the best part is, based on all these interviews that I've done over the last couple of years, I kind of hit home these fundamentals with real life stories from the interviews that I did, many of which have been Shark Tank products who have gone on to make millions of dollars and sell their company for tens of millions of dollars. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this live. I will look forward to seeing you guys next week and kind of see what craziness happens on the IP landscape throughout the week, whether it's lawsuits, whether it's tariffs, whatever the case may be. Go check out the channel, check out all the videos that's been uploaded, the information. And again, hopefully you guys enjoyed this, and I'll catch you guys next time.